Resilience. That is the grit that we need to get through tough times and do it well. In order to do that, we need to have all kinds of different attributes like community and spirituality and gratitude and so many more things. Well, in today's episode of the Live Faith First podcast, we're going to talk to Terry Healey, and he has been resilient. In college, he was diagnosed with cancer, and it was cancer that was actually on his face. And so not only does he carry the scars of having cancer, but physically he sees them every morning. And his mindset is, when I look at my scars, I see the healing I've been through. So I think you're going to enjoy the mindset of Terry and how that has led him into a resilient life. So sit down and enjoy this episode of the Live Faith First podcast. We've all seen people respond differently to adversity. Some wither, some thrive. Well, Terry Healey experienced significant adversity as a college student and chose resilience and has thrived. So today, I get to pick Terry's brain about resilience and overcoming adversity. So Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Elliot, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
I'm excited for this convecation. We've just spent the last 10, 15 minutes just chopping it up before we even hit record. So this is going to be fun today.
You're an old friend.
Hey, before we get going, would you give us the cliff notes of your life? Where were you born? Where were you raised? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So I was born up in Seattle, Washington. I'm the youngest of four boys. I always laugh and say I think my mom was hoping I might be a girl, but she struck out. She got another boy. So yeah, we lived there till I was through fourth grade, and then grew up for the most part in the San Francisco Bay Area. I would say that we lived a fairly normal family life. My parents were great in that they provided a nice foundation for us, a safe community to grow up in, but also a foundation of faith. That was something that was really important to them, and it became important to us. And so I went about my life as, like I say, living on Easy Street, Elliot. It's just, life didn't present many challenges until I got to be a junior at UC Berkeley. And then that's when life kind of took a different turn for me.
Yeah. Well, while we're here, since that kind of is the what leads into the rest that we're going to talk about, do you mind talking about your cancer journey? Just kind of giving us an idea of what that was and some of those pieces, and then we'll kind of get into your resilience stuff in a little bit.
Yeah. So I was actually the president of my fraternity at the time. I had a girlfriend. Like I said, it was kind of life on Easy Street, right? And then this bump forms behind the right side of my nose, prompts me to go to a doctor. I ultimately get a diagnosis of a really rare form of cancer called a fibrosarcoma. Sarcomas are really rare in and of themselves. A fibrosarcoma is incredibly rare. They almost never occur in the head and neck. They're usually in the extremities. Pretty aggressive cancer. But I was really blessed that at that time they said, I think we caught this in the early stages. There's no metastasis. We can remove the margins, clear the margins, and we think surgery is the only thing we need to do at this stage, and we'll monitor you. Fast forward 6 months, I went back to my life after that surgery, and then 6 months later, I start to feel these tingling sensations in my cheek. As I describe it, it's like ants crawling under your skin and you can't scratch it. And so I go back to the doctor, and again, there was a whole lot of drama and urgency that took place when I returned to the doctor, which was really frightening, and ultimately led to, the fact that this thing was back and we needed to do some major work. I had a 10.5-hour procedure at that point that resulted in the removal of half of my nose, the shelf of my right eye, the muscle and the bone from my right cheek, part of my upper lip, part of my hard palate, and 6 of my teeth. And I woke up attached to my chest because they had to transplant a full thickness skin graft to fill in this huge cavity that had been created on my cheek. And so that's how I woke up, Elliot. And suddenly I was dealing with not only cancer, but a life-threatening cancer. And when I looked in the mirror, I thought I looked like the Elephant Man to top it all off.
Wow. So you woke up, and did you expect that the surgery was going to go? I mean, did they give you any idea on what to expect as far as like how much they'd have to take out, or was that just we'll get in there and you'll know when you're on the other side of it?
Yeah, it was a very sobering. Prior to the surgery, I had been placed into what's called a tumor board at UC San Francisco, where they take sort of what you might call complex or unusual or difficult cases to a team of, in that case, I think there was 15 different specialists present. And so I knew just based on the exams from some of them that this didn't seem like a good thing that was going on here. This seemed scary based on the looks that they had on their face. But ultimately, my doctor pulled me aside and we had a consultation with my family. And he essentially said, I don't know what we're going to find, but there is a chance that you could lose your right eye. And that's what struck me as, oh my God, like this is really serious. And so
Yeah.
that's what I was focused on and that's what I was worried about. And so I was really, really super grateful that when I woke up, I had my eye. But
Yeah.
it wasn't obvious at first, Elliot, because when I woke up in that recovery room from that procedure, I couldn't see out of my right eye. And so I was kind of starting to panic a little bit. And I kind of screamed, because it's dark in the recovery. It's like there's nobody in there. It's middle of the night because my procedure went too long, And finally, this recovery room nurse comes over and she's like, "Hey, how are you? How are you feeling? What can I get for you?" Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then she starts blotting my right eye, and there was ointment all over it from protecting my eye, and I start to look out of my right eye, and I'm like, I can see. So I was immediately grateful, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the lesson in some ways of part of what I learned and what my life's about is gratitude was something that came to me pretty quickly, despite the difficulty that I was facing. Right?
Yeah. 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 And I'm going to try to count up all the little things that I hear you say that we know benefit our mental health and our resilience and our grit. And gratitude's one of them. It's one of those where when we're able to put gratitude in there, it does. It starts to shift our viewpoint. I'd love to talk about some of the angels that showed up in your life, though. Maybe especially during the recovery and that journey after that. But are there one or two that kind of stand out where
Yeah.
you're like, I didn't, I don't know the person. It was a brief
Yeah.
interaction, whatever it is, but they're my angels. So, are there any of those that kind of helped you through that season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is why I always tell people, I said, be open, be alert, be attentive to what's happening around you because there are people like that. There are angels walking around. You're never gonna know it, but they're gonna show up when you least expect it. Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the most powerful experiences I had, Elliot, was in that UCSF hospital room. I don't know how many days it was after the procedure, but man, I wasn't more than a few days out. And because I had signed up, when you register at a hospital, they ask you your religious affiliation, blah, blah, blah. And so I had put down that I was a Roman Catholic. And yes, I was open to receiving the host if somebody visited the rooms. And so I'm sitting in my room one day with my mom and my brother Rob, and this guy appears at the doorway. And he had these piercing blue eyes. He had this long, kind of dark hair. And I'm not kidding you, before he even spoke, it's like his image is so clear in my head. I'm like, that looks like Jesus Christ. I mean, this guy's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he walks in, and, all of a sudden, it was like there was no conversation. He just kind of showed up and he said, "Can we pray?" And of course we all said yes. And he kind of took our hands, my mom and me and my brother, and we prayed. And we rehearsed the Our Father. And I just remember like looking at this guy the whole time, just kind of blown away at the intensity. It was so meaningful to hear the Our Father at that point coming from this guy. And And at the end of that, he just kind of grabbed my hand and he kind of just looked at us and said, "Take it away, take it away, take it away." And I think he said it 3 times. And I just remember being blown away by that. Like, wow, that was really intense. And I felt this connection uh, way beyond what was happening in that room at that moment. And it was just this, I think my whole family, well, my brother and my mom, we were all just kind of blown away and speechless. So yeah, that was one of the angels that entered the
That's,
picture early on.
that is amazing. And that you kind of took that take it away with you. Like that, it
I
became a
did.
phrase that you kind
Yeah.
of like, I'm going to hold on to that one. That's a good one.
Yep. The take
I
it
love
away
that.
guy, I called him
Yeah.
after that. And what's interesting about the take it away guy, Elliot, is, uh, I think that I really felt so strongly about it that I went to my brother later and I said, I want to go back and thank him. And what was interesting about that experience was, we figured we kind of figured out, okay, so he's part of this parish down the street from UC San Francisco. And long story short is we found him. I identified this guy. It's like, that's him. But he disappeared. Like as soon as I'm like, where did he go? Where did he go? And so he's racing up the hill to do his next duty after church. And so, yeah, I approached him and I thanked him for it. The interesting part of that was he didn't need to be thanked.
Yeah.
That wasn't something that was, I don't think, all that meaningful to him. He knew his mission was important. Yeah, he knew he was making an impact, I'm sure. But I just felt really strongly that I wanted to acknowledge that. And for him, it was just another day, I think. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is what I do.
Yeah,
So,
that's so good. I love that. And again, I'm going to point out a few things that I see. And one is that your mom and your brother were in the room with you when the guy showed up, which just meant that you had community around you while you were in
yes.
that recovery zone. And how important relationship is. And obviously, we hopefully we want our parents, our family there,
Yeah.
but that being present when somebody's going through it. How important was that for you kind of relationally during your recovery? And again, we're going to get into resilience stuff in a minute, but for the recovery time, how important was that to have those people, relationships, friends
Oh,
around
my
you
God.
as you recovered?
Oh, my God. Incredibly grateful for friends and family that supported me throughout the ordeal. I was really blessed that I had a close, supportive family that was full of positive energy. And that's so important, right? Just that energy that they brought to the table, but they were just
Yeah.
there for me, right? And I get asked that question a lot too, like, well, what do you, because in my talks, a lot of times people will say, well, I've got this friend and I don't really know how to be there for him. And it's like, don't overthink it, just
Right.
be there for him and be in the room, essentially, to your point, right? That's all that matters. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that support system that I had was so key to me getting through what I was going through. I would have never gotten here without.
Yeah. Yeah. Without people along the way. Yeah. Now, would you just dig in quickly? What has faith meant to you? What is your faith? How did that? So we've talked about relationship, a couple of angels. We talked about doctors, and like we're gonna make it through. But talk about just kind of your faith journey, if you want to go specifically around your recovery season or just in your life since. But like, how has faith
Yeah.
kind of played a part in all this?
Yeah, so I was somebody that was raised, as I said, a Roman Catholic. We went to church every Sunday. I went to catechism. I did all that stuff, and and so it sort of built something in me at an early age that there was something more than myself. My parents always taught me that I could reach to. And so, growing up and throughout my life, I've prayed. Literally, I pray every single night. My wife sometimes looks over at me and she goes, "Are you still praying?" She said that last night. I'm like sitting in bed, like, "God, you're going for a long time." But yeah, no. So I pray for so many things, right? And that's why it takes a while. I pray for people that are suffering and struggling, And then what I remind myself, which I spend as much time on, Elliot, is gratitude, because I'm so grateful. The Lord has given me so much, and blessed that I had this experience because it gave me some purpose in my life. So I think that foundation was so important to grow up with and have, and it really helped me through tough times. I mean, when I got diagnosed with cancer, the first thing I did when I went back to my place where I lived in college was, that night I remember praying and asking for the courage, the strength to get through the ordeal. And that's all I prayed for, was that strength and courage. And I felt like I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Curious, did you ever pray, God, take this away? Or was it always like, this is happening, Lord, just get me through it? How did your prayers go around that?
Yeah. Catholic guilt is an interesting thing, right? I think I always felt guilty when I prayed, oh, take it away. Like, oh, maybe he's got another plan. But I would say yes, I did, because I had so many instances where I had scares and I had to go back and have CAT scans, and I did have a recurrence, and so I worried about that a lot. And so I did pray that this thing would be wiped away, and that I would find some purpose out of it, right? And that I could give back as a result. And I think that was something that I think I thought about early on, is like, hey, I will be a better person, if I get through this. And ultimately, I think it led to that. So yeah, I did pray for that.
I mean, that just, to me, that's just a natural human response. Like, if I can just get out, I mean, and we have Jesus in the garden about to go to the cross, asked to get out of it. So I think we have good precedence for like, it's okay to ask. And God's told his son, like, nah, you're going to the cross. Like, that's how this is going to go tonight. So it doesn't mean we get our prayers answered, and kind of makes you feel good if the Son of God is not getting his prayer answered the way he wanted, that we maybe shouldn't expect it ourselves all the time. Have you ever looked back and said, I wish that never happened? Was there ever kind of a moment where you're like, man, or has it just that God has shown up in it and made you who you are, that it's just like, nah, this, for whatever reason, this was my journey was supposed to be?
Well, I'll be honest. I think, there was a 5-6 year period after the cancer, after the kind of disfigurement that resulted from it, where I began to realize, this isn't going as well as I thought in terms of reconstruction. So yeah, I was always disappointed. I think I withdrew. I withdrew from my support system, which not my family, but my friends in some regards. But ultimately, I would say, that I always kind of felt like, because my mom used to always say this, she goes, you're here for a reason. You're gonna do great things. She used to always say that, and I never knew what that meant. It's like, yeah, sure, mom, but ultimately, no, I am grateful for it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would never trade anything that I went through in my life. I think it's made me who I am, and it's given me a purpose. And there's there's so many things you learn from major adversity. I mean, we can get into that if you want, but 3 key things that remind me of how important my adversity was and why I'm so grateful for that experience.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, I am going to ask one more question, I think, around this. But I've said that a couple of times already, so we'll see. Maybe this won't be the last question. But what would you say to somebody who maybe is struggling with the same thing? I expected this surgery to restore me back to, and I kind of, every time I keep going through this process, I keep getting disappointed, I think was the word that you used.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a physical thing, but maybe it's something else, right? Where we keep striving for this thing, and when we get there. So how did you navigate the disappointment? And was there a point at which it was a turning point where you're like, this is as good as we're going to get, and I have to learn to be okay with this. So you can kind of dig in on one or both of
Yeah.
those, but how would you respond to that?
Yeah. So I would say that, resilience is really about hope. And so when you're struggling, it's so important to have some degree of hope. And if you can find that, great. If you can't, that's why it's so important to surround yourself with positive people who can give you a reason, right? And
Mm.
give you some hope. And I think that it goes back to what we've talked about too. I think that I'm big on reflection and I'm big on gratitude. And I think that when people step back from whatever ails them, whatever difficulties they're experiencing, as hard as it might be when you're in the midst of it, to step back and say, hold on a second, um, let's pause and think about what I am grateful for, because there's always a million things that you're grateful for. And when you start there, Elliot, as you know, it puts you in a better place. It puts you in I like to call it, that's really how you get into a positive mindset. And when you do that, it makes everything a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to make you, I think, a little bit more hopeful about whatever ails you. That, hey, and it's a verse that it's something that a guy named W. Mitchell, I refer to this in my book. This guy named W. Mitchell experienced unbelievable adversities in his life, and he was not only burned throughout his whole body, but he was also paralyzed, quadriplegic. And what he said one day was, before all this happened, there were 10,000 things I could do. Now there's 9,000. I can either focus on the 1,000 I've lost or focus on the 9,000 I still have left. And so I think that kind of mindset is so important to try to live in, because life is a gift, and there is reason for hope. But if your faith can give you that, it certainly gave it to me. Um,
Mm.
so critical in sort of keeping hope and realizing that I could get through this, and I've got a greater power that's going to give me strength. Would never. I mean, my life just kind of went this way, and I'm blessed that I had that foundation, right? Because
Yeah.
that was really the key thing that gave me the hope to enable me to
Yeah.
be resilient and bounce back. And over
Yeah.
time, it's not easy. I'm not sitting there saying that, hey, you go through this and life's going to be great. No, it's not. You're going to go through some work. You got to work a little bit, but
Right.
that work will pay off. And if you have things to sort of rely on, like your faith, that strength that it gives you is so powerful, and it can propel you forward at
Through
most.
those, yeah, through those dark days. I love one of the other things I love you said, and I'm yeah clearly big on getting our hope from God, from Jesus, and all of that. But you also said, in some of my dark days, my mom would continue to come in and say, "You're going to be great. Things are going to be okay." That thing. And
Yeah.
so even to have that, what I was thinking when you were saying that is sometimes I don't have hope on the inside of me, but if I at least have a hopeful person on the outside
Yeah.
speaking that into my ears, even though I don't feel it yet, at least my brain can start processing this. Maybe there is another side to this. Maybe there is
Yeah.
a time when, yeah, this won't all be gone as if, just invisibly erased off of my slate. On the other hand, um, there will be another side of it. Like
Yeah.
this will be over and we'll be moving on. And so, like you say, having hopeful people around you makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think that's we don't have to get into it today, Elliot, but I'd love to talk to you about it sometime. The whole reframing thing, right? Because
Come
that's
on.
so important. It's like, people have to remember that change, adversity, all these things that we go through are temporary. They're detours. They're not permanent. And so there's a lot that people get stuck in sometimes, in this permanence and negative self-talk. And there's ways to pretty simply turn that around, I think, to change your perspective, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think, the other thing, just to your earlier question, is, for some people, I think group therapy, or even, one-on-one therapy. But if you can't afford that, go to group therapy. That's what I did. It was free. And I'll tell you, learning how to share finding the courage to share your own vulnerabilities and talk to people that don't know you, that aren't going to prop you up necessarily, was really important to me, because that in some ways was as powerful, right? Because here you have people telling you that you have all these great attributes that you didn't know. And so that's a big confidence booster, right? It starts to make you feel more hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And stats say the same thing. I mean, they have found that, I mean, going back to soldiers coming out of Vietnam and dealing with PTSD, that when they got in a group and talked about their experiences with PTSD, their results were way better than people who didn't do group therapy as they were going in, and especially in large things, impactful things like war or cancer that, you know, has significant surgery. We need that, again, community. We need that relationship. And,
That's what
and
it
even to
is.
know I'm not alone. Like, I thought I was the only
That's
one who
right.
thought that. I thought I was the only one who felt that. And you,
That's
all of a
right.
sudden you're in a room with 4 other people and they're like, no, man, every day that thought goes through my head.
Yeah.
Good. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not loony, and I'm not
Yep.
alone. So all of those are
Yep.
good. And now how can we, now how do we move forward?
Yeah.
Which, let's talk about that moving forward. You've written a book called The Resilience Mindset, and you have your acronym is REBAR, so reflect, build, act, and renew. And you spent a lot of time talking about reflect. Talk us briefly about the process, but really, how do you build that into your life, and why has that been impactful for how you've gotten here now?
Yeah, so I referred a little bit earlier to my survival kit, which consisted of 7 things that helped me get through. And what I did over time was, as I spoke to different audiences about my story, I would share these other methods, and people would say afterwards, you know, you talk. I know your personal story, but you share all these other things to help others deal with their own adversities. You need to write a book. So I finally, over time, kind of learned that what I should do with my survival kit essentially is package it up in a more prescriptive manner to help others go through what I call these 4 phases of adversity, and find a way to ask questions as you go so that people can personalize it to their own experience and take away something actionable. Yeah, so um, it's really this concept to really help, I think, people uh, build resilience, right, and learn to better adapt, and understand that their experience will make them stronger. But there's a process to go through, and I think I referred to it in the book as it might sound like some work, that you got to go through these steps, but I really think of it as a gift, because I do it every day, and I don't. It's not work. It's really makes your life so much better. But do you want me to talk briefly about each one of the phases, or?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Just if you want to go through the four phases
Okay.
there, and then I clearly have more questions for you. But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about that framework.
All right.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'll go really quickly. So reflect, we've kind of talked about, right? It's starting with gratitude that puts you in a positive mindset. And then what I talk about with reflect is take the time for yourself to um, it could be on your walk, it can be, last thing before you go to bed, but think about your day. Do an audit of your day. Think about, did you learn anything today? Were you inspired by anything? If you were inspired by something, is there something that you can apply to your life tomorrow? And the point is to get into the practice. Again, this is getting into a practice, because you're not going to have an inspiration every single day of your life. But if you're in the practice of it, it becomes easier to identify inspirations, because there's so much information being pummeled at us. We have so many conversations. If you don't step back and think about that conversation, I will do that with you uh, about our
Nice.
conversation later today, right? I'll
Yeah.
reflect on it. I don't want to forget it. So that's reflect. The next phase, build, is really about developing a positive mindset. It's about developing a growth mindset. This is when you start to figure out, how do I leverage my faith? How do I build that support system? How do I find life balance? And how do I choose positive? Meaning, choose a positive attitude. That's a choice. It makes navigating life's challenges easier when you're doing it with positivity and optimism. ACT to me is really that phase where the rubber meets the road, right? This is when we start to face challenges. This is when we take control. This is when we get focused, set goals, and start to make progress. That's the biggest chunk of my REBAR framework because there's so many methods to choose from. It's not one size fits all. So that's really execution mode. That's where you start to make progress in your life and you start to deal with the adversity, deal with change. And then finally, renew is that commitment to the process, right? It's the reinforcement of it to keep you on the right path. And it's when you step back and think about what you learned from the ordeal and celebrate your wins and recognize the traits and characteristics that you embody that helped you get through it. That helps build your confidence. But again, the point of that is to become a better version of yourself because you will be faced with something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I love that. I love they're all amazing and important, but I love that renew because I think a big piece for me has always been, okay, did it work? Did it not work?
Yeah.
If it didn't work, can we do it better? Do we need to, throw it all out and start fresh again? And I've done all of those things over the years. Right. And I think, to start with reflection and gratitude, and then to end with, okay, let's look at what we've done and where we've been, and is it working? If it's not, then let's go back to the drawing board. And I love you choose renew, because sometimes we can get into that. Oh, that was a failure. And I try not to use the word failure too often because most of the time I got to learn something, and we get the examples of Edison and all, WD-40. The reason it's WD-40 is that it was the, 40th, iteration before they got to W. So, but if they had taken the previous 39 and called them failures and not learned from them, then we wouldn't have.
That's right.
WD-40 or light bulbs or I'm sure a million other things like this camera that we're using right now and this microphone and so on. So, so I love that. I love to cook. And so there are meals that I cook where I'm like, did not nail it there, but that's also why I ask feedback. Like, okay, what worked? What didn't work? Did you like that spice? Why, and anyway, so, I'd like to talk a little bit about confidence versus resilience. All right. And how do we know? One of the things you said is work-life balance. How do we know when we're masking burnout with confidence? Have you gotten to that burnout place before? And kind of when you got there, how did you know you were there versus this, I'm resilient, let's keep on going. So have you experienced that burnout piece?
Yeah, and I think that's why I talk a lot about the importance of having outlets in your life, right? Because I think it's really important at some phase to get focused and set goals that that you can achieve by sort of setting aside all these other priorities in your life for temporarily and focusing on the thing that's most pressing for you. That's the way I've always practiced dealing with a challenge or trying to overcome something or achieve a goal. But that's intense, right? It can feel intensive. And so how do you relieve that pressure? And so for me, that's the whole work-life balance thing. It's trying to make sure that you're conscious of that and taking care of yourself, right? Because it's going to snowball if you don't take care of yourself. So, eat right, sleep right, exercise, try to incorporate that into your life. But I talk about outlets, and I love asking the question in my talks. After I share mine, I'll say, does anybody have an outlet that they want to share, maybe that nobody knows about? And sometimes I do it in groups where people know each other really well. And then someone will share an outlet like, oh my God, like I never knew that about you. But what I mean by that is like something that you can immerse yourself in that relieves you of the daily pressure that results in burnout. So what is that? Well, for some people, it might be sewing. For somebody else, it might be playing the guitar, playing the piano, knitting, whatever it might be, playing games, doing something with your child. an activity, but something to immerse yourself in where you're not really in a position to think about all the other stressors in your life, the day-to-day stuff. And I just think that that's helped me so much. I do a morning and an evening kind of thing, and it's just helped me so much.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your outlets right now? Maybe they've probably
So,
changed over the years.
and it's okay to change. Yeah. At some point you say, hey, I want to try something different. But the things that have worked best for me is that one thing I've done my whole life is first thing in the mornings I get up and I work out, and I try to have an intense workout. I try not to sit there on my phone and do any of that. It's like, no, I'm going to go hardcore. And it puts me in a better mood for the whole day, number one. Even though it's physical exercise, it changes my mood, makes me feel better about myself. It helps me build confidence, right? I feel good about myself all day. In the evenings, when I'd be stressed, I play the acoustic guitar. And for me, Elliot, what's great about the guitar is that, I don't have a great ear for music. So I'm not somebody that can listen to a song and say, oh, that's a G chord. Oh, that's a C. That's a D minor. I can't do that. So I would look at the music notes and I'd say, okay, I had to concentrate, on that practice. I had to concentrate on every chord change. And so what I loved about it is after 30 minutes, I was like refreshed. Even though that might have been intense, it separated everything else, stripped everything else out, and it got me into something. And again, it helps improve your confidence because you're learning a new skill, maybe.
Yeah.
You're building something new in your life. So
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Just this weekend, or last weekend, I bought a puzzle board. So
oh, cool.
basically for sit down and do a puzzle, but I can also put it away because there's not, I don't
Yeah,
have an extra room to just like, hey, we're just going to have puzzle pieces everywhere. Right.
right.
So you can put it away. It has drawers so you can organize it. And it's kind of funny. Like the last few nights, I've just been sitting at our table watching TV with my wife, or I guess I'm listening to TV while I'm paying attention to puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
But my wife comes over and she's like, this is stressful. Like, how is this enjoyable to you? What my wife likes to do is she likes the adult coloring books, so these
Okay.
very intricate patterns, and she'll have me sit down with her and color, and it stresses me out. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. To each his own, right?
this is too much. I have to stay in the lines. Like, there's too many like rules around it. So the outlet you have might be different from your
Right.
spouses,
Right.
different from your sibling, your parents,
Yep.
just because of the way we're built. So yeah, I love that. Find that little
My
something
wife's
you can
into
do.
puzzles too. She's got the same setup you do. Yeah. And so we have people over and she has to pick the whole thing up and put it in the guest room. And, we've had a
Yes,
few slippages where, oh no, all the pieces just came apart. But
yes, yes.
she loves
But
that.
yeah, it's anyway. I find it fun. You get to look at patterns and colors, and that's kind of how my brain works. I'm kind of
Yeah.
I'm a pattern guy, and so puzzles seem to fit,
It's great
but
for the
not
brain.
for everybody.
It's good for the brain too.
Honestly, I
Puzzles.
found I'm having a hard time going to sleep at night because my brain is still
Oh,
active. It's kind of
okay.
interesting. Like I've been used to like, okay, I watch TV and then go and play some solitaire, and that kind of puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
But I found that anyway, I don't know. Maybe the puzzle's activating my brain, which is good long
Yeah.
term. But well, anyway, we'll have to figure out how
Maybe
that's going to fit
stop an
into
hour
my
before you go to bed.
right. It's pretty sad that when I've reached the age where puzzling is keeping me awake, it's not caffeine and coffee anymore. It's puzzling. So that's anyway. Um, all right, let's talk about productivity culture. You have worked in startup environments. You're a consultant now, so you've done a lot in the fast-paced, moving Silicon Valley kind of world, and it was in marketing and so on. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Talk about the productivity culture, maybe in relation to your emotional health, or like, did you thrive? I mean, is that a place where you felt charged? Did it exhaust you? Like, tell us a little bit about your
Yeah.
experience in the high productivity place we live here.
So I love it because I love innovation. Actually, I think it propels us forward, but it also I'm also a big fan of change and technology disruption, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people are fearful of it. They don't like it. It's uncomfortable. It affects their job. To me, it's a wonderful thing because it actually propels us forward in that oftentimes it's going to result in a reorganization within your company where, okay, now I'm going to end up working with different leaders. I'm going to work with different people. I'm going to have to learn new skills if I want to keep going forward. And some people, as I said, that's not their favorite thing in life is to be confronted with something like that. But I will say that for me, that's probably why I like it the most is that it's constantly changing. You never get bored. And it's just, it's something that I think, every time I look back on change, so I kind of use this analogy of of a stock market graph. Like take the S&P 500 that's up and to the right, but it sort of zigzags its way up, right? And that's kind of what change is, right? It's for me anyway. There might be some setbacks, there might be some difficulties as you first confront it, but ultimately, if you look back a year, depends on what it is, but you look back and you say, I'm actually in a better place. I'm actually grateful for that experience. So I just love it. I mean, I've been through, God, you name it, from a disruption standpoint, because I'm an old guy. So, I've been part of distribution, systems integration, software, hardware, all this stuff. And I've seen it happen in big companies and small companies. And yeah, I thrived on it. I love it.
Yeah. Do you think your attitude towards it, can you point back at all to your cancer story with that and just kind of that resilience and let's keep going? Like, you think
Yeah.
that connects there for you?
Oh, for sure. I think it just puts things into perspective, right? It reminds you that, hey, I know what's important. I look in the mirror every day. I see scars. They don't remind me of my pain. They remind me of my healing. But when I see those scars, I remind myself to put life into perspective. And I've learned to compartmentalize, I would say, so when I'm working, I'm intense about it, and you can ask my wife, she'll say, geez, can you take a break, but I get pretty intense. But I think that some people might call that stress, whatever. I think those modes actually help us because they do drive focus. And when you have a little bit of stress in life, it does drive focus and it helps you achieve things that maybe you wouldn't have achieved. So, I'm a big fan of what's going on. Don't get me wrong. I think guardrails have to be set up with AI, and I do worry about certain things that are going on. But on the same token, I look to the future as positive and believe that we will find our way to a better place.
Yeah.
I do feel I feel for young people who are coming out of college because I think it's a tough environment, right? With the disruption that's happened, we're in the process of seeing it happen. Um, they're going to learn a lot, and they're going to have to adjust, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it'll help them be more resilient going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I want to highlight one phrase you just used, but I want to dig in a little bit to what you're talking about. But the phrase you used was, I look in the mirror every morning and I see scars. And I don't think about my pain. I think about my healing. And that right there, folks, is a grateful outlook. That is a positive outlook. You're not there like, oh, look at all the pain I went through. You're looking and you're saying, no, this is the healing I've gone through. Because I remember what it was like when it was an open wound, and
Yeah.
now it's closed. And yes, I can still see where I've been, but I can see the healing that got me to where I'm at. And
Yeah.
such an important mindset. So I wanted to highlight that. I love that. I've never heard that phrase used that way before. So that was a good
Yeah.
one. It, and with AI and social media, I do think we find ourselves at a very, very interesting inflection point in society at large. I'm global society,
Yeah.
because we still haven't figured out emotionally how to handle social media. Like
Yeah.
the emotional impact that it has on children and adults, like
Yeah.
we haven't figured out how to navigate that yet. So our bodies have not, our minds, our procedures have not figured that out. And then secondly, now we're just stacking AI right up on the top of that, right? So we're
Yeah.
still trying to figure out what social media really looks like long term for us.
Yep.
Is it a phase? Is it going away? What does this mean? Is it going to stay around forever? And then this AI, where now you have this disruption within all kinds of marketplaces.
Yes.
But I agree with you. I think as we navigate this, and generation coming out of college, they're going to do a lot of this figuring out. I mean, we're
They
here
are.
and we're going to be helping, along the way, but they're going to have 50 years of it. We're on the other side of that 50-year curve, right? So,
That's right.
hey, let's talk about authenticity. How has authenticity been a benefit, maybe with some teams at work, or as you've now kind of had this, I don't know if it's a career or side gig speaking. I don't know kind of what that's risen into for you yet, but how has authenticity been kind of an important way for you to interact with people?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that adversity brought me is empathy. I think I'm more empathetic to others. I recognize that people are dealing with their own challenges. And as a leader and as somebody in a work environment, I think that emotional intelligence is empathy and emotional intelligence is so critical for leadership because what I mean by that really is that if you're empathetic and you listen more and you talk less and you put yourself in a position where you sometimes open yourself up to others and share your own vulnerabilities and say, hey, I don't necessarily have the answers. I want to hear from you guys on your ideas. That builds a trusting environment. I found that, in major change environments, I think empathy helped me a lot as a leader because I think people felt safer and they didn't quit when times got tough. They stuck around because they knew that, I believed in what they could do. I listened to them. I appreciated their input. I appreciated their knowledge, their expertise. And so I just think that's really important. And I think that people that go through these difficult experiences, maybe this is about authenticity. If you can bring that to the table in a work environment, I think there's ways to do it. I think that, this concept of servant leadership where, it's really about the growth of your people. How do you do that? Well, there's a bunch of principles of servant leadership, but it goes back to what I just said. It's that concept of being real, listening more, being empathetic. And I think that also leads to, in some cases, empowerment. So, yeah, I think it's helped me a lot, and I actually talk about that a fair amount sometimes. Is this concept of people that go through adversity can actually be better leaders for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah. 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 And empathy, of course, is so important when we're working with anybody. And by working at, that could be our children, that could be our
Yeah,
spouse,
yeah,
family members, but of course, coworkers as well. And,
yeah.
it's a gift. It is a gift to be able
That's
to be
right.
empathetic. And I do think that's one of the things we are losing. Not to pick on social media here, but this is my second time. But I think
Yeah,
we lose that empathy in the cyber world,
yeah.
where you become so flat. You're not really a human. You're some sort of
Right.
picture, whatever in a username,
Yeah,
and you can't be empathetic for zeros and ones, right?
that's
But
right.
when we make this 0 and 1 into the human that they are on the other side, assuming it's not a bot, but if it's a human on the other side,
Yeah,
that starts to change even
right,
the way we interact in those spaces,
right.
let alone the face to face. So,
Yeah,
um,
agree.
now you've made a few big jumps career wise over the years. You've gone from tech and startup and all of those, and then you began consulting. And of course, anytime you're quitting a job to start something brand new, that can there's a lot that goes along with that. Would you talk a bit about what it took to take that next brave step, that one big step to no, I'm going to stop this, I'm going to start that, and kind of what got you to the point of wanting to make the change, and what did it take to kind of get over to that next big thing?
Yeah, I think I think, as I said before, change is not something that has been scary for me necessarily. So, as I kind of went through my career, I, for example, when I was with this startup that we took public, it was an intense 4 years of lots of hours and lots of stress. And so I stepped back after that and I reflected for a while about what do I want to do next. And I was only 36 years old, so I didn't have a lot of time to just sit around and say, let me think about what I'm going to do. But I did think about it, and I said, I want to I want to make a shift. I want to go into consulting. And and it was a leap of faith. I felt like I had developed enough knowledge that I could enter this game. But honestly, it sort of took its own twists and turns for me. I sort of just opened myself up to it and allowed the journey to begin. I didn't really know where it was going to land. And what I mean by that is I started with what I knew, right? So I went to venture capitalists and they would say, yeah, we need an interim VP for, this startup company. So I started doing sort of the early stage stuff. And then I woke up one day and I said, this is really hard because I'm doing these gigs and I'm always doing business development. How do I make this a more secure uh, type of career? And so that's when I said, okay, shift. We're going to make a 180-degree shift, and we're going to go focus on big technology companies with huge organizations. And I didn't know that when I started consulting that that's where I was going to land, but that ended up being more rewarding. Uh, in some ways less stressful because when you work in a big environment, you're without even realizing it, you're doing business development. You're actually in a meeting with 50 people, 30 of which are from another department who, by the way, might need some help
Right.
from an outsider. But anyway, yeah, so I just kind of yeah, I had a plan, but my plan was pretty opaque in some ways. It was, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm going to see where it takes me, and it became very rewarding. And then ultimately, my goal, Elliot, was to land somewhere where this is really my purpose. What we're talking about today, which is to help other people on their own journeys. And so, I reached a point where now this is the majority of what I do is just speak and try to share what I learned.
Yeah, I love that. That is so good. That's so good. And I talking about authenticity and vulnerability. Most people writing books about resilience or business leadership skills will start off by saying, "Well, make sure you put your 5-year plan together, or your 2-year plan, your 3-year, whatever that is, and all the steps you're going to do." And I'm more along the lines with you, Terry. Like, I have a really good understanding of, like, I think this is it. Like, that's the direction today that we're heading.
Yeah,
Realizing that in 6 months it could be different, and I'm okay
yeah,
with that.
yeah.
But also, I don't have every step, every next thing figured out because I can't. And even
No,
5-year plans seem kind of ridiculous. Like, really,
ridiculous.
5 years?
Yeah,
Dude,
no way.
AI just started, not didn't just start,
Yeah,
it started 50 years ago, but like
yeah,
ChatGPT came out just about 2 years ago.
yeah,
What's going to come out? So I love that you were very authentic and like, hey, I knew what I was doing. I knew the industries I was getting into. I had a good understanding, but I did not see the full path from start to finish, or even
yeah,
start to year 2, right? Where, like,
yeah,
it's just kind of, I got enough for today, and I got enough for like the next month or two, and so we'll figure it out as we build the airplane as we're flying, kind of thing.
yeah.
So
And I think that's really important, right? Like I was never the smartest guy. I was never the most athletic, but I knew I could work hard. I knew I had some grit, and I'd figure it out. I'd work
yeah,
my way toward it. But yeah, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and that's okay.
yeah,
We
yeah,
we can figure things out. We just have to be
right,
flexible and not beat ourselves up when we don't have a
yeah,
crystal clear
yeah,
path forward.
yeah. I love that. Okay. All right. I got 2 more questions for you. This next one is not in your book at all. I'm just curious, as somebody who's done, again, pressure cooker careers, went through your cancer survival, all of those pieces, and you are married, and it sounds like you've been married to the same person for a number of decades right now.
Yep.
For anybody out there, do you have a thing that's like, hey, this has really helped my wife and I? You even said your wife comes in on, I'm so intense, I'm focused on this right now. Like I can picture that, right? And like, what's one thing you do, or an attitude you have, or something that's really helped your marriage all these years?
I think empathy. I think it goes back to empathy, and I think that we practice that ourselves, right? We trust each other with our respective roles, and she's really good at certain things, and maybe I'm a little better at certain things. I think she's better at most things than I am, and so we recognize that, and I think it works well when we divide and conquer, and it's like, hey, I'm here to help, but like you are way better at that type of task. So yeah, and I think it's just just remembering that this is your life partner, right? I've been with her 31 years, married, and it's my life partner. So every day, it's we say we love each other, we appreciate each other, we share that appreciation, we thank each other for the roles that we play, because we wouldn't be where we are without it. And so yeah, it's just I think it comes down to trust. We trust each other, and so it's like that's the key to everything.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I don't know if you've ever been asked that in a podcast.
No, I haven't.
And it wasn't in my script, but I'm like, you know what, that's anybody who's been married multiple decades, and you naturally go through the grinder of life in decades. And so just, anyway, curious. So, all right, This is my last question for you.
Okay.
What's one thing that is exciting you right now? One thing, that when you think about it, it just makes you smile. It could be something in your house, it could be a Bible verse, it could be an activity you're doing, but what's exciting you right now?
What's exciting me right now is a number of things. The first thing that came to mind is my wife came to me about a year ago, and she said, I want to go to Antarctica. I've been to every continent except Antarctica, and I want to go. And it wasn't really high on my list. And so I listened to her, because again, she's really good at that, at sort of picking places. Like I always love everywhere she picks. And so I've been doing some research on that. And I think I've talked to a lot of people, and they say, oh, it's life-changing to see Antarctica. And the way the world's changing and everything else, it's like, yeah, I want to get there. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be in February of next year. But between now and then, what I'm excited about is just doing this and helping people. And it's rewarding when someone reaches out and said, thanks for helping me in a way that, I didn't anticipate, which is that somebody reached out to me the other day and said, she lost her husband, and she was really struggling with the aftermath of that. And that wasn't something that was necessarily on my radar with what I talk about, but she got some strength from it. And so I love that. And but yeah, no, I'm excited about life in general. So all's good.
Awesome. Well, Terry, thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
I have too.
Thank you. And for everybody out there today, let's go live faith first. Hey, you're still there. That means you enjoyed our conversation with Terry. Wasn't that whole thing around resilience and his story amazing? Well, here's my one thing that I would like to know, and put this down in the comments. What's one way that you can switch something that seems like a negative into a positive? When he said, I don't look at my scars and think of the pain, I think of the healing that I've been through. That's taking a challenging situation and turning it on its head, because he has been healed from it. And though there was pain, it is now healing, which he's able to use as he ministers to others. So what's that one thing in your life you're like, that's a pain and I hate it? Is there a way that you can use gratitude and use that as a positive way for the way you interact with others? All right, everybody, let's go live faith first.